The film begins with a parking lot filled with racing cars, 1970. British racing driver James Hunt arrives with his girlfriend at a Formula 3 race, hoping to prove himself and eventually move up to Formula 1. He introduces his girlfriend to his team and its owner, Lord Hesketh, and then shows her the car. James throws up, but that's normal. It happens before every race. Hunt pulls himself together, takes a sip of champagne, a drag from a cigarette, and gets into the car. He immediately notices a newcomer, an Austrian, Niki Lauda. In him, he sees not just a rookie, but a rival. The race begins. The roar of the engines is deafening, and Hunt's girlfriend covers her ears with plugs. Hunt and Lauda are leading. On the final lap, after a clever maneuver, the Austrian takes the lead. Hunt follows in Lauda's slipstream, refusing to give way. But after Hunt's aggressive move, there is contact. As a result, Lauda can no longer continue the race. Hunt celebrates victory, while the Austrian accuses him of reckless and dangerous driving. Hunt and his team mock him, calling him a coward. Lauda asks his name, and Lord Hesketh, sneering, says, "James Simon Wallace Hunt." Niki Lauda was born into a family of businessmen and politicians. His desire to race enraged his father. Racing, his father said, was for playboys and dilettantes. The Lauda name belonged on the front pages of newspapers alongside politicians, not drivers. Cut off from family money, Niki had to take out a bank loan and negotiate a partnership with a struggling Formula 1 team. Meanwhile, Hunt, who had already changed girlfriends, was named England's best driver of the year. But after his cocky speech, the playboy learns that his rival, who hadn't yet won anything, had entered the big league ahead of him, buying a seat for 2 million shillings. Arriving in France for preseason testing, Lauda meets his teammate, Clay Regazzoni, and the mechanics. The car he is given is identical to Clay's. It weighs 600 kilos, 190 of which is the engine. Lauda demands weight reduction and more power. He wants 500 horsepower. It turns out he knows more about the technical side than the mechanics themselves, and gives them instructions on how to improve the car. The mechanics spend the whole night rebuilding the car under Lauda's supervision. Regazzoni is asked to drive a lap in Lauda's modified car, and he posts a time 2.5 seconds faster than in his own. In exchange for technical information and continued financial support, the Austrian secures himself a spot on the team and a 3-year contract on equal terms with its star, Regazzoni. Niki prepares for a date with the team's manager, but Clay warns him that she once dated a real stallion, James Hunt. At the same time, the Brit learns that he too has become a Formula 1 driver. Stakes are higher now, and everyone plays for keeps. During qualifying, a driver is killed, his head torn off in the crash.
Caution flags are out. Severe crash at the S's.
It's not unusual. On average, out of 25 drivers starting a season, 2 don't live to see the end. Hunt is shaken by the tragedy, while the cold-blooded Niki blames the driver for making a mistake on the track. In the garage, James mentally rehearses an upcoming circuit. Suddenly, Susie Miller, a model and Lord Hesketh's girlfriend, enters. A brief flirtation ends in the sudden marriage of 2 celebrities, but Hunt's celebration is spoiled by the news that Lauda has signed with Ferrari. He was brought in by Regazzoni, who vouched for him as a genius in car building. The car is awful, like riding a pig. Incredible that with all these resources, you managed to make such junk. Lauda is not impressed with Ferrari's machines and insists on modifying them. At a press conference, Enzo Ferrari introduces his new driver. Later, in a private talk with Clay, Lauda admits that if he had another talent, he wouldn't risk his life on the track. Clay wants to introduce him to his friends, but because of Niki's abrasive character, he's left outside the door. He asks a stranger, a woman, for a ride back to the city. Sitting in her car, he diagnoses mechanical issues by ear, predicting a breakdown. Hard to believe. The car just came from the shop. But soon his words are proven right. Marlene suggests they hitch a ride while Niki checks the car. A group of fiery Italian men stop, not because they want to help her, but because they recognize the famous driver. For them, it's an honor to give him a ride, and even better if Lauda himself takes the wheel. Marlene can't believe Niki is a Formula 1 driver. Aren't they all supposed to be sexy and long-haired? And he drives like an old man. To the Italian's delight, she asks Niki to show what he's capable of. And that's how he managed to win the girl over. We move to the 1975 United States Grand Prix. Lauda once again clashes with Hunt. Female drivers in the paddock carefully watch the race. Near the finish line, Hunt's car breaks down. Lauda wins the race and becomes Formula One world champion. Hunt dismisses Niki's success, saying it's only because he drives a Ferrari, the most advanced car in the world. In their dialogue, the difference between the two men is especially clear. Hunt is easygoing, the people's favorite, a party lover surrounded by friends and women. Lauda is closed off and unsociable. He lives by a strict daily routine, and even his team doesn't like his pragmatism. He himself calls everyone assholes. Back at Lord Hesketh's estate, in the garage, Hunt is ready to do whatever it takes to beat Lauda. But it turns out Lord Hesketh can no longer sustain a Formula One team. He has gone bankrupt. Hunt is left without a team, and no one wants to sign him because of his reputation as a rule breaker. He drowns his sorrows in alcohol and quarrels with his wife. One day, James gets a chance with McLaren, but the team is still choosing between the dangerous and unpredictable Hunt, or Jackie Ickx. Not as talented, but steady, and most importantly, a sponsor favorite. Hunt convinces the managers by promising to follow their instructions and, more importantly, by vowing to beat Niki Lauda. In the end, he gets a McLaren seat. The new season begins in hot Brazil, where Lauda wins while Hunt's engine fails. At the Spanish Grand Prix, Hunt finishes first, but Lauda points out that Hunt's car is 1.5 centimeters too wide, leading to his disqualification. That night, they reworked the car to meet the rules, down to the smallest detail. In Monaco, Hunt's car fails again, this time filling with smoke. After further modifications, the car becomes nearly impossible to handle. In Belgium, the car bursts into flames and crashes into a barrier. James blames the company, saying the car is uncontrollable. Hunt calls the Austrian a rat, while Lauda strikes at him personally, pointing out that James's wife is cheating on him, something the whole world already knows, except him. After confronting his wife, Hunt realizes relationships come second for him, and he laughs it off for the journalists. But deep down, his pride is wounded. On a plane soon after, he notices a flight attendant. At the next race, a focused Hunt, driving his now fixed McLaren, takes the win, while Lauda fails to finish. Back home in England, Hunt wins again. Meanwhile, the investigation into his Spanish disqualification concludes. The ruling is overturned and his points are reinstated. In just a few months, Hunt transforms from a failure into the most talked about driver in the world. But he is still far behind Lauda in points. Between races, Niki marries Marlene.
Herzlichen Glückwunsch.
The pragmatic Austrian doesn't even hold a wedding celebration. During their honeymoon, he tells his wife that happiness makes him weak, because now he has something to lose. Qualifying for the German Grand Prix brings tension. A fan asks Niki for an autograph with today's date, just in case it's your last race. The Nürburgring is an outdated, notoriously dangerous track, nicknamed the Graveyard. On top of that, relentless rain pours down. Lauda gathers the drivers and proposes canceling the race. It's too dangerous. But other drivers, led by Hunt, accuse him of tactical trickery. Canceling the race would prevent anyone from catching up to him in the standings. The majority refuse to support Lauda. The race will go on. The rain eases, but most drivers still choose wet weather tires. The race begins, and Lauda leads on the first lap. But both he and Hunt are overtaken by another McLaren driver who gambled on dry weather tires. By then, most of the track had dried out. Other drivers begin switching tires after the first lap. Niki's pit stop takes too long, and he falls far behind Hunt. The Austrian starts closing the gap, but his rear suspension fails, sending his car off the track and into a barrier where it bursts into flames. Another driver crashes into Niki's car at full speed. Lauda is trapped in the wreckage. He's conscious and burning alive. Nearly a full minute later, other drivers manage to pull him out of the fiery trap. Lauda suffers severe burns to his head, and his lungs are badly damaged. Hunt doesn't celebrate his victory at this race. Instead, he blames himself for insisting the race should go ahead. Doctors doubt the Austrian will survive at all, but when he wakes from his coma, he hears his wife Marlene has come to see him. She visits her husband, now nearly unrecognizable. 2 weeks later, while Niki groans in pain as his bandages are changed, the Austrian Grand Prix is shown on television. In his 5th week in the hospital, Hunt wins in the Netherlands. Lauda faces a brutal lung suction procedure, but he cares more about the championship table. He insists the doctor repeat the procedure immediately. Through pain and torment, he tries to pull a helmet over his wounds, and only on the second attempt does he succeed. Just 42 days after the crash, Niki Lauda is ready to compete in the Italian Grand Prix. His longtime rival approaches to greet him and is stunned by the Austrian's scarred face. Lauda tells Hunt that it was his fault the accident happened, but also that, thanks to him, he returned to the track to continue their rivalry.
You were equally responsible for getting me back in the car.
At a press conference, Niki explains that surgeons grafted skin from his thigh onto his forehead and jokes that now he won't sweat there, a great advantage for a driver. An insolent journalist asks whether he fears his wife will leave him now. Naturally, the conference ends immediately. Hunt corners the reporter and beats him in the restroom. In the helmet, Niki suffers excruciating pain, but he still gets into the car. His vision blurs, and he has a poor start. Right in front of him, a crash occurs, snapping him back into focus. Soon, the Austrian overtakes the driver Ferrari had hired to replace him. Meanwhile, Hunt drops out with a broken car. After the disastrous start, Lauda heroically finishes fourth. Everyone runs to congratulate him, not the race winner. Another world title is almost guaranteed for him, but Hunt wins the next two races. The final Grand Prix will be held in Japan. Only 3 points separate Hunt and Lauda. The island nation is drenched in rain, with fog expected as well. Even Hunt, remembering the Nürburgring, thinks about canceling the race. But the organizers refuse. Once again, before the start, Hunt vomits. Holes are cut into the drivers' helmets to let condensation escape. At the foot of Mount Fuji, Niki and James greet each other before the start. The race begins, engines roaring. Hunt leads, while Lauda, right behind, is blinded by the spray. Niki can hardly see, but he thinks of his wife's face. He slows down and pulls into the pits early, not for repairs, but to withdraw. It's too dangerous. He chooses life over risk. For Hunt to become champion, he needs to finish at least third. On lap 58, he is in the lead, but soon slows due to worn tires. He pits again on lap 70, rejoining the track in 6th place. Lauda is practically champion. 10 laps earlier, Hunt had broken a gear lever, but through pain, he keeps racing. A mechanic suggests he stop and spare himself, but giving up isn't Hunt's style. He keeps taking risky maneuvers, one after another. The last man he needs to pass is Regazzoni. He does it and finishes third. That means he is world champion, beating Lauda by just 1 point.
That means he is champion.
The Austrian tells his wife he has no regrets. After the victory, James Hunt dives into commercials, talk shows, heavy drinking, and a reckless sex life. He later meets Niki again in Italy. The Austrian has taken up flying, something that adds even more discipline to his life. Hunt admits he isn't preparing for the new season. He just wants to have fun, and doesn't care that some people say he only became champion because Lauda crashed. James insists he earned his victory because he risked his life. In the end, both men conclude they achieved greatness because of their rivalry. For James, one championship was enough. He left racing after just 2 more years. When they met again 7 years later, Lauda was champion once more, and Hunt was a TV commentator. James lived every day like it was his last, and at 45, he died of a heart attack. He was one of the few people Niki Lauda respected, and the only man he ever envied. In 2019, 5 years after the film's release, Niki Lauda also passed away. Because of the accident, he had long inhaled toxic fumes. They hadn't stopped him from living a normal life, but eventually they led to complications his 70-year-old body could no longer fight.